Hey everyone, I'm your host, Robbie Strazynski, and thanks so much for joining us on episode number 18 of CardsChat, the friendliest poker podcast in town. On this episode, we have the pleasure of welcoming Bernard Lee, a longtime veteran of the poker media corps. He's been hosting the Bernard Lee Poker Show for over 13 and a half years. He's also written regular poker columns for mainstream publications such as the Boston Herald, ESPN.com, and most recently, Metro West Daily News. Bernard also has published a pair of poker books entitled The Final Table, Parts 1 and 2. And of course, he's done plenty of damage at the felt, with almost $2.4 million in career tournament earnings, which include 2 WSOP Circuit Rings and a memorable deep run to finish 13th in the 2005 WSOP main event. Today, we'll be discussing Bernard's career in poker and life away from the table, getting to know him a little bit better beyond the felt, and much more over the next hour. So, Bernard, welcome to Cards Chat. I'm really happy to be seeing and speaking to you again.
Well, thank you. Boy, you have to take a deep breath. Now I know what it feels like when I do that same thing to my guests for the last 13 years. They're always like, wow, that's a nice intro. And I have to be like, wow, that's a nice intro. So I get it. So thanks. I appreciate that little intro.
You got it. Well, you've done a lot, that's for sure. And, I know plenty about you, and, you've been around forever, but there's never too much you can get to know about a person. And when I was preparing my questions today, I got to say, I was like, I know a lot about him, but I don't know this, I don't know that. So I think it's time to get to know you a little bit more. I know you've been based in Wayland, Massachusetts. That's near Boston for many years, but you were born in New York City, I guess, right? Okay.
It was the suburbs, so it's about 30 minutes north of New York City. But I went to high school in the city, and then also I was something that some people really don't know about. I don't want to talk that ton about it. Just as I went to pre-college Juilliard in the city, as well as I majored in piano during that time.
Wow, that's amazing. So what was the impetus for your move to Boston? When did that happen?
So I came up here for college. I attended Harvard University. For the undergrad, they call it Harvard College. So I went here, graduated in 92, got my master's here also in 94, met my wife in 94, and have been married for almost 25 years now. So she was at Harvard as well, and we kind of never left. She went to medical school up here. I went to business school up here. We found jobs and kind of settled in, and my kids are about to graduate high school. So it's crazy how long we've been up here. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, when you went through university and you said also you went to business school, did you sort of have like a thought, I want to go into business and I use my MBA for that? Was that your original idea?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I did. The original, I mean, if you go way backward in time, the original was I thought I was going to be a doctor, in all honesty.
Wow.
I was a biology major, focused a lot on anatomy. So I really thought I love kids, as a lot of my charity work has focused on that. So I really thought I was going to be a pediatric surgeon. That's really kind of the path that I was going down for many years. And it just switched. A lot of reasons why at the time the medical profession was changing. And ironically, I was kind of discouraged by a lot of doctors not to go into the medical field, and spoke with a lot of advisors at school while I was doing my master's program. And a lot of them said, you're very analytical. You've always loved math. You love the strategy side of it. And you're creative. I think you'd be really good at business, maybe like marketing. And I have to honestly say, I did not know what they were talking about. By the way, this wasn't just one person that told me. Actually, a couple of people told me. I had a business advisor. I had a law advisor who recommended that. And so I didn't know what they were talking about. And so they said, well, maybe you should look into like a pharmaceutical or a biotech company. And I said, listen, I already did my thesis. I don't want to do like lab work and all that. And they said, no, we're talking about on the business side. And they described it, and I thought about it, and I go, well, that'd be interesting. And Cambridge in Massachusetts is really kind of a mecca for biotech up here. And so I applied to dozens of places with zero background. All it was I have a couple degrees from Harvard in biology. I like math, that
Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
You're interested in giving me a shot at a marketing associate position. And I got a few bites, ended up taking a job at one of them, did it for about 2 years. And then now the next stage in your career, you either move to a big company,
right,
and, really kind of get your feet wet, or you go to business school and really learn the ropes. And, I guess for better or worse, being somewhat of an overachiever, I said, well, I'm doing both. So I
Right.
decided to go to business school, but I got my internship at a Fortune 500 company. It worked out great. And I ended up staying with that company. It was a medical device company, which many people might not know what that is, but like a pacemaker and dialysis catheters, all those kind of things are
Sure.
made by a medical device company, and you really do need to know a lot more anatomy than if you were in a pharmaceutical company. That might be more of like the chemistry side. And I was a biology major, and so I have funny stories of going into the ORs with the sales reps talking about my products and all that. And the funny story, where long story short, is the doctor needed to, he had his gown on, and there's a tab in the back that you're supposed to hold. That's the only place that won't be sterile, because you're holding the tab, and then the doctor spins around and then you do it. And I was told beforehand, do not touch anything. Right. The sales reps are really territorial about their place. They don't want to hurt the relationship with doctors. Some doctors are like, get him out of here, that kind of stuff. I had been in a lot of ORs in my lifetime because I was prepping up to be a pediatric surgeon. I had been in ORs. I actually, was there doing stuff that maybe you're not even supposed to do, like I was there helping and watching, and I've been literally looking at it. I've been in some autopsies, stuff like that. Anyway, this doctor was like, I need somebody to grab this, and the nurses weren't there and no one was there. And so I just kind of took 2 steps and grabbed it.
right.
Because I knew what I was doing, because I'd seen it done before. And he spun around, and the rep comes flying over like, don't touch him. And I said, and the doctor was like, no, he's fine. He did
Right.
exactly what he was supposed to do. And they were like, how'd you know that? I go, to be honest, I've done it before,
Right.
like I've seen it done before. So, I didn't just do it to do it. The doctor was like, come on, somebody needs to help me, that kind of thing. So I was like,
Right.
So that's a weird world that I did. So I was in that
Right.
industry for over a decade,
My goodness.
working in the real world. So,
Right.
what I did in 2005, I was 35 years old.
Right.
And
So you had a backstory in a sense.
yeah, I mean,
for sure.
I had been working for a long time, and I was moving up the ranks, and, director level kind of for marketing and new business development
Mhm.
at a big company. And, a lot of people thought I was absolutely crazy. What are you doing? Like, you've been working toward this goal to move up and
Sure.
et cetera, et cetera. And now you're going to give it all up to play a game for a
Right.
living?
Right. So
this isn't just the public. This is like my family telling me this too.
Right.
What,
Oh my
nuts?
goodness.
I mean, I not only do I have a bachelor's and master's, but I have an MBA. Like, everything's leading up to all this, and it just didn't make sense. Why would you do this? But obviously, it's been a passion, and 15 years later, I'm still doing it.
Right. Thankfully, it's certainly worked out. Poker, I guess, stole you away. You chose the path that a lot of people wouldn't take. You went ahead and took it. Before we get into the career, that you've done in poker for all these years itself, when were you first introduced to poker? It didn't just sort of come out of the sky. I mean, for a while back, right?
Yeah, I've been playing poker, or at least was introduced to poker when I was very young. My father and his brothers, and then also their friends, would get together during the holidays and play. So Thanksgiving time, Christmas time, we would eat our meal, kids go upstairs, not to be sexist, but the wives and the mothers went into one room and chatted. The men went into the other room and played poker. Thankfully, they weren't stogie people, so that was never an issue. There was definitely some drinking involved, but it wasn't like slosh drinking, here, have a whiskey while we're playing, or a beer or whatever. And so anyway, they would play, and, one of the things that you would hear is they would argue about hands. how could you make that call? You had two pair, blah, blah, blah. And at the time you're 9-10 years old. You're like, I have no idea what they're saying.
Right.
But boy, does that sound cool to argue. Like in the sense of like, and argue is probably the wrong word. It's just a banter back and forth, right? You're an idiot. How could you make that play? Oh, stupid, that. And you just thought that was really neat, And so I would sit literally at the top of the stairs and just listen. And I'd kind of like come down to midway step and just kind of peek over the railing and watch them and go like, oh, I don't want them to see me and tell me to go back upstairs, that kind of stuff. So, I asked my dad, like, could you teach me how to play? And I still remember when he taught me, he was playing with wild cards. And I had, I don't remember what it was, but I had 3 of a kind. And I had like an ace and a pair, a wild card. And so I said, I have a full house.
Right.
And he's like, no, you don't, dummy. You have 4 of a kind. The wild card goes with it, that kind of thing.
Sure.
And I still remember that because I was like, oh, that's, you can't make that mistake when you're playing that kind of stuff. Of course, we don't use wild cards, but I had played in high school. Hope none of the teachers and, administrators from my high school are watching this, but like, I played in high school, played a regular game in college. And, in 92, Foxwoods here in Connecticut opened up. And it was the first year that it was open. If you think about it, Foxwoods now has like 7 million people. So their cards literally say the number that they register. Right. My numbers is like just over 100,000.
Wow.
So you really could imagine like I was really, and like 10,000 people probably early on are just employees, right? So we went in like May of when they opened up in like February or March. And so my buddy and I, who he was the guy who kind of hosted the game, we would play 2 or 3 times a week in college. He goes, hey, listen, they opened up a casino in Connecticut. You want to go? Yeah, sure. So we rented a car because under 25, you couldn't rent cars from like, the major brands. So we rented this car in a local place that was called Rent-A-Wreck.
Oh, right.
I love it. And it was like, I still remember it was like $25 to $30 to rent the car and have gas. And I think there was some extra insurance because we were under 25. And we would go down during the summer and we'd probably go down like once a week. And I went and I played 7-card stud. And I read Doyle Brunson's section in Super System by Chip Reese, who was an Ivy grad from Dartmouth, or went to Dartmouth for Ivies, and wrote the section. I have it. I photocopied it. I highlighted it with yellow, then green, then blue. I mean, like I really got that section. I really focused on it. I played 5, 10, 10, 20 usually. And he would go down and play this game, which I really didn't understand. And he would explain it to me every single time. And they, stud, you have all your cards yourself. This one had like a lot of these community cards. And I didn't really get it. And I asked him and he goes, yeah, it's called Texas Hold'em. What the hell's Texas Hold'em? And he would literally describe it as we were going down. I'd watch it and I go, this is ridiculous. Why would you ever play this game? Like you all share the same cards. How is this different? So that was my first introduction to Hold'em. But I would play stud. That was the kind of the game that I would play. I really played it hard. And we would go down, like I said, it was like kind of like a summer job for a while. And back then, I mean, God, it was taking candy from babies. I mean, people didn't know how to play. I mean, even though stud was the game of choice on the East Coast, people still didn't, people were still taking their chances. And, I wasn't playing huge 75, 150. I was playing 5, 10, 10, 20. And so going home with a couple $100, especially when you're just out of college, I mean, it's huge.
That's a big win. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it was big. I still remember one time we were there and we got there, and we'd usually get there around like 11 o'clock, and then we would leave around 7 or 8. I remember we got there and I just went on a run, and I probably made like, I don't know, $500-600 instantly, like just one monster hands and all this stuff. I remember going over to him and looking over him, and he was up that much too.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, wow, what a coincidence that both of us are up this much. And I said to him, I said, hey, you don't want to not press our luck. You want to go home? And he went, yeah, let's do it. And so we both packed up. We both went home with $500-600 in our pockets. We only stayed down there for maybe 2-3 hours. We drove probably longer than we were there. I remember taking my college roommate, my buddy who was one of my college roommates. We were living together after we graduated, and another guy was in town. So I took him out to dinner on me, that kind of
Nice.
thing.
That's a good feeling.
Big spender.
For sure.
Yeah. And so that's kind of how you got introduced to poker. And, this is in the 90s. And then I didn't really play that much, in all honesty. I really didn't play that much. If I went to a casino, ironically, I played probably some table games. I got into craps, which is a bad habit to get into, but I love the numbers. I really love numbers and that kind of thing. So I wasn't like addicted to table games, but I loved learning the numbers and learning the odds and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And if I went, I'd play there for like an hour, maybe a couple hours or something like that. I didn't really get into blackjack that much. I got the card counting side of it and all that, but never really got into it so much that I had to do it. And then in 99, when I was graduating business school, the town that I now live in, Wayland, we had a bunch of buddies who started a game. So they called me and said, "Hey, are you interested in starting this game?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm in business school right now, but I pretty much am done in like March, April. So once I'm done, I can join the game."
Okay.
And they had only been playing for like a week or so. It wasn't a big deal. I literally play that game still to this day, 21 years later.
I love it.
And we are playing it, on even during the pandemic, we try to do a version online and all that kind of stuff. So that's how I kind of got back into it.
Right.
That's basically a limit dealer's choice horse game kind of thing with like deuce to seven and things like that involved. And then when Moneymaker did what he did, I jumped on the tournament bandwagon, not the poker bandwagon, right? But I will tell you that it really wasn't Moneymaker for me. It was actually the year before with Varconi and Julian Gardner. And that was in 2002. For people who don't know, Queen 10, look it up. You'll know what I'm saying. Phil Hellmuth almost got his head shaved, head shaved because of it and all that stuff. And the person that really changed it for me is a gentleman who is I believe a lawyer from Maryland named Russell Rosenblum. And I think he finished 6th that year. And he was playing. He got knocked out. And then it came over to the commentating side with, I think it was Gabe Kaplan. And they were talking about it and saying this and that. And so he was talking about a hand. And then he says, I think they have something like Queen Jack and da-da-da. And that's why he's betting it this way and that way, whatever. And in my mind, I'm like, how in the world can you know that they have Queen Jack? I mean, this is before whole cams, remember, right? So you really didn't know. Sure. So he's completely guessing.
Right.
And in my head, I was like, that's ridiculous for you to say specifically Queen Jack.
Right.
They play the whole hand out. He flips over his hand. Wouldn't you know it? I mean, the guy really flips over Queen Jack. And I still remember it in my mind being like, wow, this guy just literally predicted the hand.
Right.
And I just said, you think you know a lot about poker. You don't know anything about poker. If like, to me, it was like, this is impossible to predict this.
Right.
So that really got me going to start really trying to learn the game. Then Moneymaker did what he did. And then I got really inspired to play in tournaments. Tried to qualify for 2004 and I didn't. I mean, I'm being honest. Like I tried like crazy. I went on Stars. I tried to play in all the tournaments, etc. And I didn't qualify. And it was probably like February, March timeframe. And at that point, it was just going to be too late. Like I would have had to have committed because I was working that, I got to take this week off. So I really at that moment said, okay, I'm going to now devote the next year to playing and learning this game. And so I literally would read a book every night. My wife jokingly said I should have a PhD by now because I read so many books in the world of poker. And then wouldn't you know it, one night, I did it. Like I came home from, ironically, tennis practice, 11 o'clock. It was a free roll. And I said, well, it's just practice for Sunday because that's the real one. And next thing you know, I'm at the final table and and I get my seat. To just wrap up with regards to Russell is that a couple years later, in 2006, wouldn't you know it, I'm at the final table of the Foxwoods 5K at the World Poker Finals. and who should be there but Russell? And so I pulled him aside and I told him the story, and he was like, wow, that's really cool. And since then we've actually known each other. He knows who I am. I bumped into him, and, you know, literally it was because of what he said that I really got involved in poker. And, you know, how funny is that his commentary in a booth, and I've obviously done commentary and all this stuff. So that's kind of how the whole scenario happened. And, you know, next thing you know, I'm off to play in the World Series of Poker main event, and it almost didn't happen as well. So
like, I know, of course, you burst onto the scene, you know, in 2005. It was a very favorable time, one can say, you know, right in the middle of the poker boom. You had your 13th place finish and a big run that, you know, when I look back at your Hendon Mob, and it's actually surprised me, though, because I know you'd been playing poker before. That's your very first cash that's recorded. And like, you know, just to go ahead and play in a 10K is a pretty big deal. So like, how many tournaments did you play beforehand, or you just didn't cash, or like, I don't get it. Like, it didn't make sense.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I had not been playing in a ton of tournaments, but it's actually not my first cash. I actually had a cash before, but for whatever reason, it didn't register. And the irony is, guess what? It was the first World Series circuit event ever.
Oh,
it was in Atlantic City. I'm telling you, it was in Atlantic City. I flew in that morning. I got there around 10:30, and it had already sold out.
Wow.
So we had a line. I was, I think, alternate like 2021, and they didn't have extra seats, etc. When we got onto our table, everyone played. It's not like today where you slide into an extra slot. We all sat down at the same table.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
All of us had the same number of chips. And we were like, I think we were maybe 12, 15 blinds. I mean, you have to remember, we start with like 1,000 chips. It was what you bought in for is what you started with.
Right. That's what it was like.
And yeah, it was crazy. And I don't remember exactly the scenarios, but I literally, I think I doubled or tripled up, like, you know, one of those hands where you just knock out two people. And now I jumped. I remember, I think I finished like 22nd or something like that. Crazy that I remember the numbers, but like, I remember it was, I think I had kings and he had tens. It was a big hand. And so it was dealt, right? And so one of the cards got flipped up. And so I got dealt another card, and I got dealt kings. Obviously, I wouldn't have gotten kings if it didn't get flipped up.
Right.
We get it all in. I flip over kings. I think he flips over tens.
Oh my goodness.
And then he spikes a 10. And I was like, this is the most unfair thing I've ever seen in my life. I would never have been involved in this hand.
Right.
Like, because the card that flipped over was just an insignificant card. I would have had like king 4, would never have been involved in this hand. Why am I involved in this hand? This is not fair. And I'm about to get knocked out. But I think it was on the river. Boom, a king hit. And so I doubled up. Right. And so like, then I went on.
Right.
So that specific tournament, for whatever reason, they only registered the final table. And so anyone who finished after that did not get a cash.
Gotcha.
And I do have a cash. Like, that was my first, that was really my first cash in a tournament. I think I cashed in some, like, you know, local Foxwoods events or something like that.
Or dailies, or something like that.
Right? Yeah, whatever it was back then. I mean, today they register all those, but back then.
We got to talk to the Hendon Mob. We'll get that in there.
Yeah. It's funny. And I could even figure out exactly how much it is, I'm sure. But like, the funny thing is that I had played in a main event prior to that. I played in the Foxwoods World Poker Final. So I qualified for it. And I remember playing in it. It was really, you know, I got to day 2, and I lost a flip. It was 8s versus ace king, and I got knocked out. And so it wasn't my first experience ever playing in a tournament per se. I had been preparing for it. I actually worked a little bit with people, and really kind of got to get the game. So, I mean, for that time, I had worked very hard to be ready for that moment. And so I wasn't going in and just being like, you know, that seems like the right play to do. I'm all in, you know, that kind of thing. I really like done my studying as much as you could at that time. Remember, there's nothing online.
Of course.
I read literally every book, which was probably only like 20 or 25, but I read them all. You
Sure.
name a Skolansky or a McAvoy book, I read them.
Right.
And so I was ready for that.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I had been playing a good amount, and but yeah, it was obviously on Hendon Mob. It was the first time that I technically cashed, but it really wasn't.
Right. Well, it is, like I said, it's prime time to have made a splash in the poker
100%.
world, a high profile finish, the marquee event in the world.
Right.
And that, like the right time, right place at the right time, that's what opened, I think, a lot of opportunities for you to jump into doing poker media.
Yeah.
Is like, at what point did you sort of make that switch and said, okay, I'm going to go for this and do it, or this is the dream, like, or like you said, you had your family telling you, what are you, crazy? So what exactly happened there?
Yeah, so to take one step and to reiterate and kind of jump on what you were saying is that why it was such a good time. Like, so Steve Daneman, who finished second to Joe Hashim, and ironically, I interviewed Joe Hashim for his 15th anniversary of his win on my radio show. So Steve and I have bumped into each other over the years. We've had meals together, and we always say to each other, you know how lucky we are that we did it in 2005. That was and for people, you got to go back. I mean, now it's like you'll never remember, but go backwards in time. When 2003, when Chris Moneymaker did what he did, it was being recorded on TV for ESPN, but it was not live.
Right.
So he wins, and I think it was May.
Yeah.
No one hears about it till October or November. So Moneymaker's literally walking around for 6 months. No one knows who he is.
Yep.
And then boom, it's Chris Moneymaker. Okay. So you have to, like, that's actually kind of like unbelievable. It's kind of like when I was younger and Wimbledon was on TV and they tape delayed it.
Right.
And you would watch it at, like, instead of at 9 a.m, breakfast at Wimbledon, it would be on at noon or 1 o'clock, but the result was already in. But there was no, like, Twitter that, like, literally to the second,
there's no ticker underneath on ESPN.
No, Federer hits a forehand winner to go up 6-4 in the first set, to win the first set. Like, that's nothing like that. So poker was not was not the level that it was now. So he could remain anonymous for a year. The following year, same thing. Raymer wins, totally not. Greg and I become friends, and so is Chris. And Greg tells a story where he jumped on a plane and he was wearing, like, poker stars, and somebody jokingly said, poker, ha ha ha. Do you know Chris Moneymaker? And Greg saying, literally, he goes, yeah, I just came back from shooting a commercial with him. And the guy's like, ha ha, that's pretty funny. And Greg's like, I really did. Yeah. Like, I literally just came back from, and they didn't know who he was. And, so, but in 2005, it was a little different. Yes, it was taped for later. It wasn't like now live streaming, but it was the first year that it was at the Rio. Okay. So 2003, 2004 was held at Binion's, a Horseshoe downtown. First year that I was at the Rio, because at the time, Harrah's, now it's Caesars Entertainment, purchased the right to the WSOP and the Horseshoe brand, but that's beside the point. But at the WSOP. So you had a lot more eyes watching this event because it was at the Rio, bigger deal, bigger press, more Las Vegas press, and Card Player was basically reporting it live on the internet, which back then was still a big deal, right? Like, I don't think I had Wi-Fi, but I definitely didn't have Wi-Fi, and I'm not 100% sure if we had internet connection at our house. So I forget how my wife, maybe we did, maybe it was through a wire setup, but it was like a free service through my wife's work. It wasn't like we purchased it, right?
Different world.
So anyway, so I mean, it was just a really weird world that we did. So anyway, like you said, I finished 13th. I got a lot of press in the sense of I had a very good story. My wife almost died giving birth to our second child. She actually went back into the hospital, and we thought she had an infection, but it ended up being that she had so we knew this beforehand. She had a tumor, which was benign, on her ovary. They took it out. And the reason why she went back to the hospital is, as a doctor, they always say the worst patients are doctors. She wasn't taking her pain meds, and she just had literally, like, abdominal surgery. So she said, everyone, my parents, her, what are you doing? You're leaving your wife, who has a 2-year-old and a 1-month-old, to go play in a poker tournament. What are you, crazy? my wife said, go. She's literally sleeping next to me every single night, watching me do this with the, and like write down notes and go like this. You know what I mean? Like
sure.
Watched me my dream, and she knows this isn't a whim. I've really worked hard at it. And she said, listen, go live your dream. Because in her mind, let him get it out of his system. He'll play a day or two.
Right, and he'll be back.
Yeah, I mean, like, what? I mean, what is this going to be? Like, he's going to get close. And then we're driving to the airport. She says, if you cash, do I have to throw you like a party? Because back then the cash was $10,000, right? Which was basically just min cash, was basically you get your money back. But of course, because this was a satellite, I was going to get $10,000.
Sure.
And I said, no, come on. I mean, don't get me wrong, $10,000 is a lot of money, but it wasn't going to be life-changing. I said, and I still remember she's driving, and I went, listen, if I get 6 figures, you could throw me a party.
There you go.
And we both went, ha, 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 that's funny, 6 figures. That's a good one. So anyway, day one, I was at the end of it, 5,619 players. I think there was 2,000 left after the few day ones flights.
Sure.
I was 100th out of 2,000. Like, I even got calls from a couple of people being like, holy crap.
Yeah, that's the real deal.
Day. 10,000 starting chips. Again, people, 10,000. What you bought in is what you get. Today it's 60,000.
Right.
I ended day one with 61,000 chips. So do the math like today. If you start out with 60,000 chips, you would end up with like 370. Yeah. I mean, just unbelievable, right? Day two, another good day. I got up to 100,000 in chips. And we came, now back then we played 8 levels, hour and 40-minute levels, not 2-hour levels. We went till 3 in the morning. And then we came back day 3 with only 9 people left to go. That was it. And then we broke the money. So 569, I think 560 made the money. We broke that like an hour in, obviously a lot of stalling and, just like a typical bubble. And then next thing you know, I just next day, made the next day, the next day, made the next day. And, I call my wife, and it's always, I actually just did a appearance on national TV, a storytellers, stories from the stage.
Right. I remember that.
WGBH. And this was the story that I told. And, my wife's like, oh, just, get some good sleep. Hope you, rest up, and we'll see you home soon. Day 3, make it through. Wow. I've made $25,000 or whatever it is. Day 4. I remember calling her being like, you might want to get the party list going.
Right.
I just made $175,000. I mean,
6 figures.
It was nuts.
Yep.
Yeah, it was really, really nuts. And Boston Herald's calling me, Boston Globe is calling me. I'm getting interviewed all over the place. And it was a feel-good story that obviously my wife almost dies giving birth to our child a while back. I end up going. Next thing you know, I'm this. So ESPN did 2 feature stories on me, and of the final table, they only did 2 feature stories, I think, on Hashem, Daneman, and I maybe one other player. I didn't even make the final table. So every day, everybody who meets me asks me this question: what year did you make your final table appearance at the main event? Like, everyone thinks I made the final table. It's like Dennis Phillips. Everyone thinks Dennis Phillips won the main event, right? Everyone's like, oh, what year did you win the main event? So like everyone asks. I mean, almost to this day, 90% of the people are asked, like, what year did you make the final table?
Right.
Unbelievable. And so after that, what happened is that a gentleman by the name of Rich Corbin, who I really do thank a lot, because he really asked me to do this. If he didn't ask me to do this, I don't think I have this career, if you think about it. He said, hey, he was working for Poker Stars, and I was working with Brad Willis at the time as well, because he was doing a lot of the media stuff online, which sounds funny. He wrote a really nice piece on me as well. And he said, hey, listen, you're our last free roll person on Poker Stars, and you have such a great story, and ESPN has picked it up. You mind just writing down your thoughts about what happened? I think it'd be fun for the people to hear about them. I said, yeah, sure, no problem. He goes, yeah, so when you go home, just kind of put down your thoughts on paper and just send them. Sure. So I start writing it. And I think what they thought was going to be like 2-page, like front and back, double spaced, right? It ended up being, I think, 26, 27 single space pages.
Oh my God.
And it was just like this cathartic experience. Like you were just like writing this, writing that. Oh my God, do you remember this? And oh yeah, do you remember this? And oh yeah, this is incredible. Do you remember this thing? Oh, Katie, do you remember when this happened? And oh, I remember when I met Joe Hostrom for the first time. Oh, sure. Norman Chad came. So it ended up being, there were a lot of stories. And also back then, I was actually known for writing down my hands exactly what happened. So aces versus tens, and then I would be able to do the pre-flop betting. The flop came out with the suits, what the betting was. I had my own shorthand and everything. And I literally just found it a few months ago, like this plastic bag of all my tournament sheets. I did it probably for the first 3 or 4 years.
My goodness.
And so then I could write down hands literally accurately. So people were saying, like, how do you remember the suits? And I was like, well, I do have a cheat sheet, right? Norman Chad even mentions it on one of the ESPN broadcasts. So anyway, he asked me to write this. I write 26, 27 pages. It ends up being like an 8 to 10 part series on PokerStars blog. Wow. And at the time, it becomes as viral as something back then can be.
Sure.
People are like on all these different forums and all these different like word of mouth and email. Hey, this is a really great story. You might want to read. Hey, this is a really cool story. You might want to read this. Well, somehow I got back to 2 people. One, a guy who was writing for ESPN was a friend of one of the guys in my home game.
Okay.
So he Steve Rosenblum. So he was actually a writer for ESPN more for boxing, but they asked him to do poker writing. And so he ended up doing a story on me in, I forget what magazine, in all honesty. And he came to our home game, played in our home game and all this stuff. And he introduced me to Andrew Feldman, who was the poker editor at the time.
Right.
And Andrew read my stuff and read the stuff on PokerStars. And he said, hey, would you be interested in writing like that for us? Right. And I was like, are you kidding me? I remember I met him at the United States Poker Championship at Taj Mahal in Atlantic City. And I said, you got to be kidding me. Like, you had me at hello, dude, when you asked me to write for ESPN. I mean, come on.
Of course.
And, one of the big ones for ESPN was I was doing a live blog during a World Series circuit in Council Bluffs. So after every level, I would call in to Andrew and say, like, let me tell you what happened. He would type it into the blog and it would come up. Wow. And wouldn't you know it, I made it to like 4th that year. So like, it wasn't just let's follow him and see where he gets knocked out in like 70th. Oh my God, he's made it to the final table and they're live streaming the final table and he's calling it in. I mean, it was really kind of one of those things. Yeah. But then also locally, the Boston Herald, who had done a story on me, a gentleman calls me up who was the editor at the time, John Stranich, and says, hey, we've been looking for a poker writer. The Boston Globe had a column at the time, and Herald and Globe are kind of like 1-2. For people who are in New York, it's like Times and New York Post. I'm not relating the levels. It's more like that's how kind of what it is. And the Herald is known for its sports section, and they wanted to add a poker column. I'm a biology major. I don't write. And so this is really funny that these guys are asking me to write.
Right. Well, they've seen what you did for PokerStars.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. I wrote it a lot. My wife helped edit it, all this kind of stuff. So next thing you know, these guys are all asking me to write. I almost turned it down, to be honest. I really almost turned it down. But thankfully I did it. I did it for like 7-8 years. The 2 books that you mentioned, they're all based off of those columns. They're just, so many people asked for previous columns. I put them all into a book and I actually wrote notes on them as well. So I sell those and those proceeds go kind of to my charity. Beautiful. That I do. So that happened. And then 2 years after that, my editor, and by the way, during that time frame, I'm still working. I didn't quit my job right away. Right. And I told my wife, I really want to do this. And she goes, listen, you can't assume you're going to win $400,000 every year.
Right, of course.
you got to have a job.
The voice of reason, right?
Right. So if you do this and you do media stuff or whatever, Okay, that's one thing. So, I mean, don't give me a challenge. For people who know me, don't throw the gauntlet down. I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to slap you right back with it. I didn't do that to my wife, obviously, but it took 2 years, but I write these columns. I, get some sponsorships, not huge ones at the time.
Sure.
And then next thing you know, my editor on the Boston Herald says, you really tell these great stories, whether it's in the column or just us talking. I love your stories. Why don't you do a radio show?
Huh.
And I said, what are you talking about? I'm not a. He goes, I'm telling you, if you just talk to people and just do this and kind of have conversations with your friends, I think people would be interested. And you have to remember at the time, I know that their podcasts are everywhere.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
But then?
Back then, they were like nothing.
Maybe
right?
1, 2, yeah.
If, right?
Yep.
So I said, okay. And by the way, they weren't on radio necessarily.
Right.
And mine's still on here in radio in Boston. So we decided to give it a shot. I linked up with somebody. The guy who was helping me out really kind of showed me the ropes. And next thing you know, I have a following, 10 to 25, sometimes as many as 100,000 people listen to the show every single week, just because, for better or worse, I have pretty good guests because I know all these guys.
Yep.
My Joseph Hashim was my second guest ever.
Amazing.
And it was live back then. So he says it on my show. It's really kind of cool. He says, I don't wake up this early for many people. I'll do it for you. And the trivia question is, who was the first person ever as my guest? It's Alex Jacob, who won the United States Poker. Yeah, he won the United States Poker Championship
pre-Jeopardy.
Nice. Way before. And so I actually have talked to him after his Jeopardy run and tried to get him back on the show for the 10th anniversary. We had the interview all locked up and ready to go, and then he had to cancel for whatever reason, and we kind of haven't done it since. But maybe the 15th anniversary.
There you go.
Which is amazingly, literally right around the corner.
Sure.
It's, like you said, it's almost, we're starting preparing for our 14th anniversary.
Right.
So, that's kind of how the media all started.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like you said, I've written for ESPN, Boston Herald. Right now I have a column in the Metro West Daily News, which is really cool in the sense of, I'm one of the Share My Pair pros, which is an app online. Go download Share My Pair, and you literally can put down the hands, the betting, and then it simulates it. It really like goes through it. So it's like a little video of the hand. Mm-hmm. And so that's embedded into the column, and the whole column is based off of that hand. And then it's just all descriptions about that column.
Right.
And so depending on what it was, like there was the Vanessa Selbst hand that happened against Gail Ballman. We wrote about that hand. We wrote about some hands that happened this summer during the World Series .com, online events, right? And so there's like I'm giving a preview. The column this week is on Joseph Hashim's final hand against Steve Danneman, because it links back to my interview. So there's a lot of cool things that happen with that. And so the Metro West Daily News is like a very big paper here that links up with towns all outside of Boston and including my town. So it's really kind of neat that I'm writing for my home paper, and they just start a relationship with USA Today. So who knows if it'll continue to expand and all that. So really neat that this career has kind of happened.
It's amazing. And look, you mentioned how the show started, 13 and a half years ago, almost 14 years ago. It's, it was one of the only ones back then, and you're still going. So I'm wondering, it's rare to have anything in poker going for that long, really. What is it that keeps you going and motivated to keep doing the Bernard Lee Poker Show week after week?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Obviously, like it's as it's not that easy to continue doing it and balancing it and all that stuff. But I a lot of people ask me, so how do you like your new career? How do you like your new job? That's the way they kind of describe it. And I say it all the time. I don't have a job. Right. I literally feel like I'm retired, because the way I would relate, I mean, a lot of people who are watching this obviously are into poker, right? Sure. But I talk about it like with other people that I discuss with, whether I'm playing golf or whether I'm just at a dinner party or whatever. I ask everyone, what's your favorite hobby? whatever it is, golf, gardening, reading, cooking, cycling, doesn't matter, right? Whatever your favorite hobby is, imagine being able to do that for a living. Imagine being able to write for the top publications in that field.
Sure.
Imagine being able to make appearances and make money off of writing a podcast, a radio show, and that you enter competitions in that field and you can make money.
Yeah.
Imagine being able to do that. And they're all like, wow, that'd be really cool. I go, that's what I do. I mean, that's literally what I do. And so I don't consider it a job. And so when people are like, wow, you've been doing this for 13 years with a radio show, do you consider keeping, when are you going to stop? And I go, I don't know. I just always have someone else to talk to. Like there's always, I mean, it definitely has been a little challenging for COVID, right? Since COVID, tournaments are far and few between. But in the real time frame of poker, literally, it's almost like you have to choose, like, who should I interview?
Sure.
Like the two people won here, another person won here. And during the week, for the World Series of Poker, when it's actually going on in Las Vegas, I have 2 to 3 people on a week.
Right. Because
there's so many winners that are just flying by. So, I mean, I enjoy it. The game's constantly changing. We try to do different topics. There's a lot of things to do it. Will I eventually stop? Yeah, I'm sure eventually one day I'll stop. I don't think before 15 years. There's no way. In all honesty, I'd be hard pressed to say that I won't go to 20. I think I will. I think 25 is a cool number. But who knows at that stage of the game where we'll be and all that stuff. But right now I enjoy it. I like doing the radio show. I like writing the columns. It's not work per se. It's fun.
Sure. I enjoy it. I enjoy listening to it. I'm got a little plug, and it's on the recaps and timestamps of your show are on cardplayerlifestyle.com. You did mention Andrew Feldman. I did have a question related to him. I remember watching. It's not just audio. I remember watching you with him co-hosting the Inside Deal on ESPN.
That was a great show.
It was a sort of like, for those who never heard of it or weren't aware, it's sort of like a Sports Center-like show for poker during the boom days. And that sounds just fantastical in this day and age. Like, it actually happened. And it was really good, amazingly, ESPN level production.
It was at the ESPN studios,
I want to tell you, can you tell us a little bit about that experience? How long did the show run for? And do you think that such a show could ever happen again?
So it was one of the best experiences I've ever done. I miss it literally every day. I mean, when I think about it, I really, really miss doing it. It was a show that we really enjoyed. We did it on I think it was the college football set at ESPN. And the NASCAR set was right next to us. So we would watch those every time. It went on, I want to say it was like 2009 to 2011. And it was so much fun. It really, really was. It was a great introduction to TV and how to, even though it wasn't on TV, although because of it, I was on TV. I was on the WSOP broadcast a few times because we talked about stuff. It was really great. We had a host, and then often I was, and sometimes Andrew was as well, the analyst. And it kind of went through a few iterations, and basically Black Friday killed it. That's really what it is, right? And so obviously the sponsorships start going away because there's not as much advertising money involved. So that's really, kind of what hurt us. Could it happen today? Sure. I mean, I think it can, but you have to fund it, right? I mean, I think that's what it is. And I think that there's different versions of it right now, but it was literally a sports, like you said, it was a Sports Center show. I talk about it like, basically they would have a host and they would have somebody who plays poker and does the analysis. It's like if you're doing a NFL Live, they have all the former players. Well, I wasn't a former player at the time, but I played, right? And I would literally, there would be somebody we were talking about and I was like, well, I just played against them. Or, it's always very interesting when you talk with somebody and they go, yeah, I just spoke with da da da.
Yeah.
You know, like they're talking about in baseball. Oh, I just spoke with Aaron Judge.
And you're not name dropping. It's the real deal.
Right. Because you're literally talking about him. Like you're
Right.
literally like, oh, I wonder how the Yankees are going to do. Well, I just talked with Aaron Judge and he says that the clubhouse attitude is really great. I mean, that's literally inside information.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were doing the show, I would literally call these guys and be like, so what do you think? You know what I mean? And back then we had really great access because we were ESPN. I did the first interview with Joe Catta after we won, literally the first interview. Right. So I just talked to Joe Catta on my radio show after, unfortunately, Darvin Moon passed. And so we were talking about that. So Joe Catta wins. He gets, this is at the Rio Penn and Teller Theater. He gets shuffled backstage and then upstairs in the back. Mm-hmm. We were the first ones to see him before he was brought down for other interviews. Wow. So we got him. Yeah. And I was literally the one that was talking with him. And I mean, how cool is that? Yeah. And, you know, so it was just such a great, I really, really enjoyed it. I had so much fun with it. I wish we could keep doing it and could have kept doing it and would love to do something like that again. It'd be phenomenal. It was just so much fun.
It's certainly good stuff. I mean, you mentioned so many names, and obviously over all of these years in the industry, you've built a gigantic network of relationships within the industry. I know one person you're very close with, and it's written right there on your lapel. It's Tana Karn. He's the owner of Run Good Gear, the Run Good Poker series. Those who may not necessarily know about it, can you tell us sort of what is the series about? What's sort of like the flavor, and what's your role with Run Good Gear?
So I'm one of the kind of ambassadors for Run Good. I was from kind of the beginning, not right from the beginning, but near the start. I was introduced to Tana by one of the pros, We Win, and we were talking about it. He was explaining their concept, and I loved it. I really did, and talked with Tana on the phone, and he asked if I would be interested in helping promote the Run Good brand. And then ultimately the poker series. Right. For those people who have not come to a Run Good Poker Series event, and obviously we haven't had one in a while due to COVID, but when it does eventually come back, if you haven't been, first of all, they were GPI's mid-major series of the year, back-to-back years. Yep. I mean, it's one thing to be named once, but to have it back-to-back years really just shows there's just so much fun involved. They don't take it themselves so seriously. And don't get me wrong, I play in the World Series circuit events. I play in the Heartland events and, WPT. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we don't take it seriously in that sense, but there's a lot of fun going on, right? There's a bounty event every Tuesday night that kicks it all off, and drinks are flying everywhere, and like, come on and get me, that kind of, I mean, there's a lot of fun. Like we're wearing jerseys one year to represent our town. I'm wearing the Boston Celtics. And it's just, he's done such a great, really give all the credit in the world to Tana, who literally on the back of a napkin wrote down the business plan of a Run Good brand. Right. And by the way, I'm honestly not even joking. Like, my wife steals my sweatshirts all the time because she's like, they're so comfy. And they are. Really, I mean, it's not a brand where like you literally just like, oh, whatever. I really do wear a lot of, I wear them out and about, and people always think it's like marathon stuff just because of the word run kind of. But he's done a phenomenal job. They do a great job. They've been doing other ventures as well. And I give Tana all the credit in the world for really building a brand. And that's not easy to do in this industry. Yeah. And he's done it well. The poker series, like I said, seriously, if anyone, they are primarily in the Midwest. There's some in the West Coast as well. And hopefully will come to the East Coast. But if you haven't been to an event, you got to go to an event. It's really a lot of fun. I mean, the buy-ins are relatively low, right? Nothing over $1,000. Usually, like $675 is the main event, but you can win a lot of money. Yeah. I was fortunate to win the inaugural main event at Downstream, and it was like, I don't remember the specific number, but I want to say it was like almost $50K plus a $10K main event seat. So it just isn't like, I didn't rip up that check. Let me just tell you that, right? I mean, like,
and you have a great time doing it while you're playing, of course.
Exactly. Yeah. And we had a lot of great guys, a lot of great ambassadors, a lot of great women as well on there, and some really, really good players. Jamie Kirstetter was someone who everyone knows from
Yep.
the broadcast. She's part of the team as well. And I mean, I don't want to leave anyone out, so I'm going to stop with Jamie, because once I start one, then everyone's like, "Why did you name me?" You know, there's a
Right.
lot of people, and so it's a really good group.
Right. Well, Jamie was a former guest a past guest on this show as well. It's always a good reminder to all of our listeners and everyone watching. Feel free. We got a bunch of episodes. Start from the beginning, work your way all the way to here. I know you've told me in the past, Bernard, your favorite game, and maybe it's changed, but your favorite variant is
Nope,
Deuce
hasn't
7
changed.
triple.
Yep, hasn't changed.
Yeah.
It's
Deuce
single
7
draw.
triple
Single
draw.
draws. Single draw is my favorite.
Oh, single
draw is my
draw,
favorite.
okay.
The no limit version. Yeah, but I have really started playing triple draw a lot. You know, I haven't made it a secret. My dream is to win a bracelet. That's
Sure.
really what I would like to have. And I obviously I came very close, finishing runner up, and they just it still hurts to even say it and think about it. I literally think about it. I mean, probably at least once a month. Like something will trigger it, and I'll think about, I could have done this, I could have done that, or whatever. But I love the no limit version, but I really do enjoy the triple draw version as well. I've even introduced it to my home game. And
what is it that you like about the game? And it's obviously different than, you know, your standard run of the mill no limit hold'em.
So no limit for no limit hold'em, there's so many iterations with regards to, like, okay, then there's the flop, and then there's pre-flop, and then there's turn, and there's a lot of different decisions and a lot of different paths. And obviously that makes the game very fun.
Sure.
But in Deuce to 7, it's almost the purest game of poker, right? You play pre-flop, you get a draw, or pre-draw, you get a draw, now you bet. You either have it or you don't.
Right.
Does he have it or not? And I just bet this much. Do I have it or do I not? I mean, you can see people betting 2.5 times pot.
Yep.
What's going on? It happens.
Yeah.
And it's just become a very fun game. I really enjoy it. It's a game that not many people play. I wrote columns on it on ESPN, Card Player. I did a video. There's a group in Connecticut that started playing this game because of the column I wrote. I've gotten multiple emails of being like, "Wow, this is so cool," and I just enjoy the game. And you know, like I said, I still think about it. I still play it a lot. I hope to continue to play that at the series, and we'll see where it goes.
Sure. Well, I mean, if you don't necessarily take your first bracelet in that specific variant, one thing which you'll have the chance to do for the first time, I couldn't believe it when I saw, because you don't look a day over 40. You're 50, Bernard. You're eligible to play in the seniors event for the first time. Are you going to give that a shot when the World Series runs again?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yep. Absolutely. I mean, a bracelet's a bracelet. I mean, like,
Right.
Doesn't matter. If he gives me another chance, it's another chance. They talk about the World Series circuit when they had the champions, which I've played in 2 or 3 times. Oh, well, is that really a break? Did they give you a bracelet? It's a bracelet.
Oh, yeah.
I don't really care what you're talking. The online, is it a bracelet? Yeah, it's a bracelet. They gave you a bracelet. They shipped you a bracelet. They put you down as a bracelet. 100%.
Right.
This summer there was a seniors event. I played in it, you know, and I think a lot of people were texting and emailing and all this stuff, going like, what are you playing in this event for? And I said, well, I thought it was 50 and older. And they're like, we're reiterating, what are you playing in a second? Okay, I know it sounds crazy, but I'm 50 years old. Trust me, I played tennis the other day, and my body reminds me that I'm 50 years old. You know, it's not. I don't bounce back like I used to anymore. But
do you think in seniors events, the younger you are, like the closer to 50, you've got a little bit more of an advantage? Or, you know, you've been playing for an extra 10, 20, 30 years, you're 80. Does that give you more of an advantage?
I think that no matter what age you are, if you're up to couple things. One, of all of the iterations strategy wise, whether it's GTO or whatever it might be, but then also being able to adjust to people who don't play that way. And I think that's the big key, because you're going to have people who are 70, 80 years old who are still of the ilk of, I raise 5x pre-flop.
Right.
The next continuation bet is 10x. I mean, you know, so that's one. But then the other thing that I think is very interesting is that, so, you know, again, I've been playing literally professionally for 13 years. I quit my job in 2007, and literally this was my profession. But I've been playing, in casinos in this kind of a tournament setting pretty much since 2004. So for 16 years. And back in the early years, you could look at someone and I would say 75%, 80% of the time, you're pretty much spot on. You know, he doesn't look like he's very experienced, older guy, might be playing a little too conservative and or very old school. Yeah, younger kid, you know, probably internet, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
You do that now. I mean, there's every once in a while you look at somebody and you're like, oh, he probably doesn't know all the old tricks or new tricks. And he'll 3-bet light from the button. And, you know, you're like, Jack here. It's not like it's that bad, but I'm out of position and whatever. And then you like, let's say you make the call and the flop comes up or whatever. And then the guy flips over 9-4 offsuit. And you're like, really? And I think in just to today's day and age, these guys can just look up online and pay $19.99 or whatever it is. And now they just saw a video of somebody doing that. And you're like, oh.
Yeah. All right.
Maybe I should try that.
You tell us, so I'm laughing because I know exactly what you're talking about. You're experiencing these things.
I still remember it. One guy did it to me and I was like, what? Are you serious? Like, it's not like, do you know who I am? That's not what I mean by that at all. It's just more of like,
where did you learn
you
that?
are capable of doing that? Like, wow.
Exactly.
Right. You know, so yes, I mean, I think that's, you know, do I think I'll have an advantage going in? I think, listen, I think you got to answer it the way Phil Ivey said it. Okay, so great. So let's just say I am 5 times better or whatever number of times better than the average player.
Right.
So if you're playing against 1,000 people, by technicalities, you have a 0.1% chance of winning that tournament.
Sure.
So if I'm 5 times, if I'm 10 times better than them, now you went from 0.1 to 0.5 or 1% chance of winning the tournament. I mean, come on. It's not like you're going to cakewalk to the final table and be like, all right, let's now start playing. I mean, you still got to avoid all the landmines and all this kind of stuff. And so do I think I'll have a slight of it? Yes, I do. But do I have the premise of that in the next 3 years where you'll see a World Series senior bracelet? Come on, I'm not stupid. I mean,
I'll put $5 on it, Bernard. I believe in you.
Hey, I got you. I'll tell you right now. I'll dinner on me if I win. I mean,
Amen.
That's simple. I mean, that's easy. Yeah, but I think it's foolish to think that you're gonna, no matter what it is, winning a tournament is harder. No matter what. Somebody once said to me, like, would you rather play a single table satellite and have to win it for a seat in the main event? Or would you rather play 100-person satellite and have to get down to the final 10? I go, what kind of question is that? Like, I don't care what it is. Winning is hard. Winning just because of the nature of it all. Whereas getting to the final 10, you mean I need only 1 chip and I'm 10th place? Give me that one.
Absolutely.
That's just, you know.
Well, we're about to get into our section of the show where we take questions from the Cards Chat community. But before we do that, I've saved my, I think, most important question for you for last, Bernard. We talked about your media career. We talked about everything you've done at the felt. But away from the felt and away from the media, you've also been known to be one of the most charitable-minded people in the poker industry.
Thank you.
It's the truth. I'm just speaking, you know, I'm reading from the sheet here, but I wrote it. You know what I mean? Like, I know exactly what you've done. You're always participating in and promoting charity poker tournaments for good causes. You've worked closely with Jacob Zalewski with his One Step Closer Foundation. And I know now you are marking the 10th anniversary of your own personal initiative. It's the Holiday Charity Drive. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, the long story short is I just feel very fortunate to have been doing this for a living. And so I thought I'd have to kind of give it back and pay it forward. And, you know, without going into all the details, we basically provide holiday gifts for homeless families in New England. And, you know, I kind of combined my love for children and my love for poker and try to put them together. And these homeless families, specifically the children, aren't going to be able to have holidays. You know, money is very tight. And so we asked them for a specific list of items. We can't provide all of them, right? I mean, somebody asks for a puppy, it's not going to really, I can't provide them a puppy, just because of logistics more than anything. Somebody asks for like, we're not in the spirit of doing it for frivolous items. You know what I mean? Like we're very, health. So sports, academics, or so books. It's not like we don't give them toys. We give them toys and things of that nature, but I don't want to be giving somebody like computer games, like so they can sit in front of a TV and do that. That's not kind of what it is. So we give them art supplies, we give them all a teddy bear. I know it sounds kind of corny, but that's really what we do. And so we try to provide those for the parents, for the kids, and every mother, we give them a winter coat as well, because so many of these mothers are selfless, and they're like, oh, everything to my kids, and we want to do something nice for them. So we've been doing it for 10 years, and my kids get very, very involved in it, and we enjoy it. And so I'm really proud of doing that. And like you said, the One Step Closer Foundation is an organization where Jacob Zalewski, who is unfortunately afflicted with cerebral palsy, started this charity about a decade ago as well, and helps out families, especially children with cerebral palsy and other afflictions. They just did a charity drive through Run Good, and it was a trivia night that they do, and they just did it where it was trivia for toys, and all the donations went in to help the One Step Closer Foundation. With their toy drive for the kids at the hospital. So I kind of linked those two groups up because I thought it was great. So I mean, I enjoy it. I think it's, especially in this day and age with regards to where we are with COVID, I think it's even more. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to see the families. We usually literally see them and give them their gifts. That's not going to happen this year, but the organization that we work with is called Family Aid in Boston. And they were surprised that we were going to do it this year. And I told them, why wouldn't we do this? I mean, if anything, this is the most important year. So they were very pleased, and we're very pleased, and we're excited to do it. And we're delivering the gifts this week.
Beautiful. I mean, it's in a game of poker where so much is about taking from others. It's so important, and it's so beautiful to see, someone like you who's always giving to others. And, it's not, not that this is unimportant. The cutting a check is an important thing, but that's not all you do. You literally go around and you get, I know I've spoken to you about this before. You and your children are involved. You go, you get the stuff, you pack the bags, you give it in person. It's just a beautiful thing, and more power to you, and a great example to set for all of us in the community.
There are a lot of hours put into it, and I'm not joking, a lot of backbreaking work in the sense of putting them into specific bags. And I mean, I know I've been up at 4 or 5 in the morning and just cursing the world, being like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And then when you see the kids' smiles, it's kind of really all worth it. I mean, it happened this year as I was putting this stuff together. You lose time, right? I was doing it till like 11:30 with my daughter, and she's like, "Dad, I gotta go to sleep. I got school tomorrow, no problem." And I started putting all these packages, and then I'm in the garage doing it, and so you don't really see the light coming in. And I went into the kitchen, and next thing you know, you hear the birds chirping, and you're like, what time is it? And it was 6:45. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to drive my daughter to school in an hour. And, that's kind of which is what happens, but it's all worth it.
Yeah, definitely a beautiful thing. Speaking of community, like I said, it's the segment of the show where we turn to you guys who are listening, who are watching in the Cards Chat community. We want to see what questions you have to ask our guests. And our first question for you, Bernard, is from Acid Burn FX. Thanks so much for sending this one in. Here's an interesting one, kind of an eclectic one. What superpower would you most like to have?
What superpower would I most like to have? I guess looking into the future, right? So then you can guess what cards coming and bet accordingly. That's probably my one. Looking into the future, kind of do a Marty McFly, and then you get the book ahead of time, and you know what's coming.
I love it. Okay, and also asks a second question again from Acid Burn FX. When was your life most out of control?
When was my life most out of control?
We picked the great questions. This was a really good question. I like it.
I have to say, I've never been asked that question. And I have to say, I'm not sure. I'm a pretty don't want to say calculating guy, but I always really kind of look forward. I'm a 18 to 24 month thinker. So I really kind of, there's obviously times where things change. I guess if you want to say the most out of control is probably when I was changing basically careers, right? I was thinking I was going to be a doctor, and then suddenly I went into business and did not know anything about business, didn't know what I was getting into. And that was definitely an interesting 6-month period of time. And I remember coming home. I still remember coming home that one time, and I looked at my wife and I go, I'm not going back to medicine. This is it. Like, this is really what I'm going to do. And so, yeah, that was a pretty crazy time.
Interesting. Our next couple questions here come from Matt Burns 88. Thanks so much, Matt. Bernard, who is the best or most enjoyable person you have interviewed on your poker show?
Beside you?
Checks in the mail, Bernard. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We're gonna get a little appearance here from the Poochie who just jumped on my lap. Yeah, you're gonna see a little appearance from the dog. Say hi. Say hi. That's our dog.
So Jackson, right?
He just exactly. So he just jumped up on my lap. Most enjoyable interview.
Sure.
You said.
Yep.
Most enjoyable interview. I mean, the only reason why I'm thinking about it is that there's just so many. I really have a lot of fun. I mean, there's obviously the obvious answers with regards to like the Daniel Negreanu's, just a lot of fun interviewing them. I just interviewed Joe Hashim because he's a good friend. You know what I mean? Like, I would say the people that I've had on sort of the most are always enjoyable, because obviously you're not going to have somebody on like 6 or 7 times if you don't enjoy interviewing them. Right. So I'll say the 2 people I've probably had on the most. One of them will be, of course, that's Chris Moneymaker. I've had him on so many times. And then the other person is Blair Hinkle.
Oh, nice.
We have gotten to know each other very well. He's actually become a Run Good ambassador, so we see each other more even there. The guy is a god at WSOP Council Bluffs. Like, he just can't lose there. And that is a place where you always go to the places where you have success. And I always go no matter what. Right. And so I always used to see him there. And we've talked a lot about strategy. And so I just have a lot of fun talking with him. Nice. So, that's kind of a couple of people. And I would say, and again, I'm not just saying this because I'm Run Good or whatever. I think also another person who we've had on the show a lot too is Tana. Sure. I mean, I just enjoy talking with him, and he's just a really down to earth guy. And, it kind of shows in his business ventures and also his kind of getting the team together. Yeah, well, it's definitely a good dude. And again, Matt Burns, 88, you are a good dude. You have another question for Bernard here. And you mentioned Bernard, actually, I'll preface the question here by, all the books that you've read, back in the day, and how much you prepared for that, that shot in the 2005 main event. So Matt's question is, how much do you study now in comparison to when you went deep in the 2005 main event? I think it's a very relative term, right? So like what I did back then was, so there's so much more information now than there was back then. Sure. So if you compare hours to hours, I don't think they're that far off, in all honesty. Wow. But back then there wasn't as much information. So you couldn't study 12 hours a day, right? I mean, you just can't. Like, I mean, how many books can you read for whatever it is? So, and also I worked too. So it wasn't like I had all day long. So I probably spent an hour and a half, whatever, going over stuff or whatever. And I probably do something somewhat similar to that. But I do them in different ways, right? So like right now, not only will I study or look at hands online or whatever it is, but I also talk with people. And the irony is that I tell a lot of people, I get this comment from a lot of people I interview. Oh, that's a really good question. Oh, I've never had that question before. And then the reverse is I get people who listen to my show who say, that question you asked is exactly what I would have wanted to ask. And the reason why I think those questions stick is I really have in my mindset when I'm doing the interview is I try to flip my mindset back to a fan. Right? If I'm a fan, what would I like to ask this person?
Right.
And a lot of them are strategy questions. Like, what would you do in this situation? So I literally ask them. And by the way, when I ask them, I'm actually learning too.
Taking notes, I'm sure. Also, yeah.
Yeah, I really am. I actually literally write down like, oh, go listen to this podcast again or something. So, so back then I used to do a lot of work, and I actually almost like exhausted everything that could have been done back then. I mean, literally, I'm not joking. I literally read almost every single book, and again and again. I don't do that. Like, I have not read every single book that's available right now.
Yeah,
I haven't. I mean, it's almost impossible.
Sure.
But and I think that to the extent of what I did before, I don't do now. Like, I don't read everything and learn everything. But you know, I feel like I don't do as much studying as I did before. But if you go by time-wise, I do. You know, but it's just that there's so much more information out there. That kind of thing.
Well, good answer.
So I don't know if that was a weird way of answering the question, but that's
it's the truth. That's you can't do better than the truth.
It's not like I don't study. I think I definitely keep up with the times.
Right.
But you know, I know some of these guys who are spending 3, 4, 5 hours on small blind versus big blind GTO, like situate. I mean, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it to that extent. I may look at some of the things. You know, I've done some work recently with Learn WPT. And so I'm doing that. You guys can get some bonus stuff with Learn WPT /BL Radio. And there's a lot of hands on there that do. So that's kind of helped out a little bit too.
Nice. Our final community question comes from Shells. Shells has been really great at putting forth the questions for our guests. So thanks again for doing so, Shells. Bernard, our final question for you. What do you like to do in your free time, if you have any?
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So I like sports. I really have always enjoyed sports. So I am a pretty big golfer. I really enjoy golf. Played a lot this summer, and single digit handicap. So I play a lot. Broke par for the second time and shot 3 under this year. So I was pretty happy with that. And,
nice.
and enjoy that. Play tennis a good amount, play basketball. Of course, that's kind of been on hold this year. So I enjoy sports. Love hanging out with my kids, obviously. Really enjoy that. Love hanging out with the guy who's chomping on my hand right now and goofing around. Of course, I don't know, he gets in these little fits every day for about 10, 15 minutes. And right now, not the best time during an interview, but that's what it is. My dog is going crazy right now. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy, that's what I kind of do in my spare time. I enjoy it, and really kind of peace of mind for me in that sense of athletics is something that I enjoy.
Good stuff. Well, thanks to everyone who sent in questions for Bernard Lee. And of course, a friendly reminder out there to all of you out there in the Cards Chat community. We'd love to see you submit your questions for our future podcast guests. There's a dedicated thread for it in the forums. And of course, please be sure to give us a good review on iTunes and help spread the word via your social media channels if you like the show. Bernard, before we let you go, how can our listeners reach you if they have some more questions, or if there's anything else you'd like to plug or promote?
Sure. Yeah, so you always go to my website, bernardleepoker.com, which we're actually literally in the midst of improving right now and giving another version to. All my social media channels, primarily Twitter and Instagram, Bernard Lee Poker, at Bernard Lee Poker. And then, obviously the radio show. You can get in touch with as well. So definitely always interested in touching base with people, and it's amazing in today's world how often you get communicated through with social media. Literally, somebody just before I came on air sent me something and was talking about something. So it's great that people can have interactions so readily in today's world.
Yeah. Well, Bernard, thank you. I really appreciate you taking and making the time to speak with me today. Thanks to everyone for tuning in once again to another episode of the Cards Chat Podcast. I'm Robbie Strazynski. You can follow me on Twitter at CardPlayerLife, and I wish you all a wonderful day.